Welcome to Scale Computing Insights. I'm Chris Schultz, Director of Product Marketing, and today I am joined by Alan Conboy, our Office of the CTO. We'll be talking about ransomware and why security is, in general, a significant concern and what you can do about data protection. So in my mind, Alan, there are a couple additional factors that have caused security to become more important, at least over the last couple of years. No one wants to hear about COVID and the pandemic, but it also created a cyber pandemic, not just a physical, personal one. It caused confusion, chaos, weakened infrastructure with distributed work from home devices, and of course, major attacks on healthcare, pharmaceuticals, supply chain, energy. I mean, you name it, right?
Yeah, it brought a magnifying glass, if you will, to every single aspect of how almost everybody in the technology space or that uses technology got their jobs done looking for weaknesses. And oh boy, did ransomware find them.
It found a new home.
Mm-hmm.
Your home. Not my home, not my home, maybe not your home. So while companies were and have learned to leverage AI and bot tools for their own efficiency, those bad actors have those same tools available to them.
Oh yeah, and they're making more every minute of every day. You know, that's the thing when it comes to security, as the world writ large the way it is today. The way we all did business in 2006 just doesn't apply anymore. The level of trust, the level of technology, the level of responsiveness to potential breaches, it's a whole new world. It absolutely is. You know, it's funny when you look at legacy infrastructures, when you look at cloud infrastructures, they get attacked in equal measure. They absolutely do. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can go read through a massive list that's updated by a friend of mine over at B of A on breaches just against cloud infrastructure because of security approaches and the lack of forethought people had historically put into these things. Now, when you circle that discussion back around, does that mean that approaches like hyperconverged infrastructures are immune? Of course not. Windows is going to be Windows. And the level of security you bring to how you implement your infrastructure, whether it's cloud-based, on-premises based, or HCI on-prem, hybrid, the thinking has to shift. And the products that you use and how you use them has to shift in lockstep to stay ahead of that ransomware curve, if you will.
Makes me think of some of the big tech vendors who've been hit. You know, SolarWinds, Kaseya.
Oh, that list is as long as my arm. How many folks operating in AWS have been hit? Without AWS writ large going down? Of course not. But the way things are implemented in those architectures, in almost every architecture, there's gaps that have to be filled. And that I'm actually glad you mentioned AI on the front end here. In the security space, in the recovery and remediation space, what I see is the leveraging of AI to catch bad actors from even before the moment where they implement their, pardon the term, nefarious plans. You know, when AI is used properly, which I find with several of Scale's partners, things like ransomware attacks, going back to even WannaCry. You know, everybody knows about that one, and believe it or not, it's still running rampant. The second those encryptions start to take place, AI can step in and say, nope, not going to happen. Kill it, kill the threads executing it, roll back the files to their unencrypted state automatically. while simultaneously blocking, containerizing, and getting rid of the source of that infection. But it's more than just that. It's a multi-part strategy.
I'm glad that you mentioned the proactive active detection. I don't know if you're aware. I came from the backup and recovery area.
Right, right.
Isn't that enough?
No, God, no. You need a multi-part strategy. I mean, asking me if that's enough is like asking me, is it enough to have a frame and four wheels to have a car? Of course not. You need all of the pieces engineered to work together. As it relates to this discussion, security and strategy, multi-factored authentication, that's a baseline. Trust no one. Well, let's do it a little more Reagan-esque and say trust but verify, right? Then layered on top of that, you need an infrastructure that doesn't require VCPs and CCNEs and SNIA certified storage engineers all working in concert to be able to A, implement, and B, be able to recover from any negative event. You need an infrastructure that deals with that stuff largely on its own. Okay. You find that in the hyperconverged space. You absolutely do. But on top of that, you also need things like automated snapshots as the next layer that are immutable, that the source workload that they're taken from doesn't even know they exist, much less have access to them. Okay. So that your worst case scenario, you've still got points in time you can fall back to. All right. Then on top of that, that's where your background comes in, Chris. That backup strategy with regular DR testing, not just did it work, but does it work? Does it restore? Does it automatically convert? Is it ready to go in the case of an oh no moment? Those backups, they also need to be immutably protected. You know, a lot of current gen ransomware, one of the first things it targets is existing backups before it ever starts delivering its payload. You also see that where a infection takes place and there's a months-long time delay before that payload even starts to execute, hoping to infect backups. Well, the right answer there is something we were just talking about, where AI comes into play and that proactive real-time monitoring of all processes on a system with a safety cache built into it, if you will, so that as a negative payload deploys, those processes can be stopped cold and automatically reverted. Okay. Again, without a human having to do anything. You know, it's funny that here at scale, we've had customers attacked by ransomware as well. And through this multi-pronged approach, the number of customers that have lost data, 0, none, zip, zilch, nada. As a rule of thumb, between active protection, which comes to us through our partners, through our own snapshotting and replication models, through real-time replication to multiple sites in parallel of data blocks, it's not anywhere near as high a concern. That's because all the pieces, much like the steering wheel works with the rest of the car, have been engineered to work together. So when you talk about strategies and trying to find security in an inherently insecure world, for your data, for your runtime, for your applications, for your sales force out there in the world trying to make business happen. Okay. That's what it takes to overcome these constant wildfires of ransomware, cryptojacking, so on and so forth, that are running wild since well before the pandemic. But like you mentioned at the outset, pandemic just brought the magnifying glass, threw it from second gear into fifth.
I think the one thing missing from your car, Alan, is
Mhm.
the people. Yes, AI can do a lot of things, but ultimately there's still a person sitting in front of the screen using their weak passwords or clicking on links that they shouldn't in their emails, even though they know better. Although even those emails, they're starting to look a little bit more legitimate than they really are if people aren't checking their, who the sender
Um,
is. So I would strongly add the knowledge and training piece to that all-encompassing protection. If your staff
absolutely right.
knows what they're up against and they have that training,
You're
those those
absolutely
risks
right.
those risks are reduced.
That's a huge part of, how do I want to put this? Historically with DR, you check your backups, did they succeed?
Yeah.
Periodically, you might test a failover and a fail back. But that same mentality has to be brought to the people sitting at the keyboard, because otherwise you've got that eternal seat to keyboard interface problem,
And
right?
the people doing the testing, if you're just testing for a power failure or, an irate employee that deleted all of your backups, that's one scenario. But in a ransomware case,
Mm-hmm.
that
Oh,
testing is done very differently.
and quite frankly, how many businesses have we seen just over the last couple of years go under because of a ransomware attack that they weren't prepared for, because they didn't build out an HCI based infrastructure and layer in all of the capabilities that it brings to the table just in and of itself, and then layer in active protection on top of that. Uh, that's the ultimate downside of trying to have security through obscurity. Plan
For
for it.
our
It's
for our
gonna
audience
happen.
today, then perhaps you can expand a little bit on HCI and the other technology pieces, because scale computing does not offer a ransomware protection solution
We
as it
don't
would be.
directly.
Right.
Okay. You know, how do I put this? Scale computing focuses very specifically on the infrastructure need itself. Okay. Whether you're talking about containers or virtual workloads, making them highly available, excuse me, making them fault tolerant, and making them so that they're incredibly easy to be implemented, run, and used. Okay. On top of that, we layer in feature functionalities like snapshots, replication, immutable snapshotting, things of that nature, where the snapshots, when they're taken, they can't be changed. They are baseline. They are held in isolation from everything else. So a bad actor getting in and trying to mount a snapshot and change data or delete it, it's not going to
It's not
change
going to
that
happen.
base snapshot. He can think he did all day long, but the base real snapshot, nope. That's as locked gets. Now, on top of that, rather than try and reinvent the wheel, we've chosen to partner with companies that focus almost all of their resources on things like active protection. Okay. Now, some of those partners' products we bring to the table right alongside the clusters that folks are looking at implementing. Others, we maintain a deep technology relationship with. And as we update and they update, we work in lockstep and jointly test. But at the end of the day, security will always be a multi-layered approach that you need to think about from the word jump, from the beginning, and implement it all the way through. Okay? It starts with multi-factor authentication to deal with things like weak passwords. Leverage it throughout. That needs to happen. Real-time active protection that's leveraging AI to catch the things. I mean, you mentioned emails, phishing scams. Heck, I've had a few that I had to go take a look at 2 or 3 times and then go look at the underlying code behind the email itself. to see if it was real, because they're getting that good, you know? Having that AI-based active protection as the next level of backstop that handles the stuff that does get through, it's absolutely critical. And then having the traditional protection that's more than just dealing with the guy with a backhoe that trenches through your internet line, but rather handles the Joplin level events,
Right.
where your site just got wiped off the face of planet Earth. Having that data ready to go in alternate locations, ready to point a browser, click a button, and your teams are back alive. Okay, that's part of it too. And all of that is part of what you get when you build out a proper HCI-based infrastructure.
From the ground up.
Yep. You know, the days of, heck, I'll just keep using this old Dell PC as my server for my business, those are long gone. When you start rolling this out across thousands or tens of thousands of sites, as you start seeing HCI implemented in edge computing implementations, it becomes all that much more critical that your base recipe that you're rolling out across all these sites incorporates all these elements and does it in a way that doesn't require the grocery store manager across your chain of grocery stores to be an IT guy, that it can just be implemented and not have to be thought about, that it can be the sentinel on the watchtower.
Fantastic. And I think that's about all the time that we have today. So for our audience, if you'd like more information, please download the ransomware ebook and understand where scale computing does play, or contact your sales rep today. Thanks.